we'll
Here,
get
she was really sad, although she had several other pets.
have
And,
an offer for
so
some,
she was,
to go somewhere else.
She's probably.
Maybe it's for
6:30 p.m. There are no TPPS awards tonight? Okay. So we have a presentation on equity.
Yeah, so Mr. Potter, if you want to bring up the equity presentation. Why equity, right? So this has been something that has been a focal point for our district this year with our staff. And just trying to think of like how to lay this out for the community and the board is, you know, we have been members of the Dane County Equity Consortium for the last several years. And which kind of forces us to look at our systems and our structures through the lens of equity. And then, you know, we felt as a district, for us to take a step forward, we really, in this area, which we felt we needed to do, we really needed to provide more information to staff and some training to staff. And the goal this year was simply to develop a common language and common understanding throughout our system about equity. And it's just like building a house, right? You gotta have a really solid foundation of knowledge. And there's some people that wanna go really fast, others who don't, you know, so it's trying to make sure that we have that solid foundation as we work forward. So the administrative team are all gonna take a role here in kind of like looking at what we've done this year and what our possible next steps might be for equity. And I know we shared some of this with the staff last week, but we felt we should share it with the board and the community as well. So the agenda is what is equity? When we're talking about equity, why are we focusing on it? What activities have we done? And really what's, you know, just a final reflection on next steps. So
That's me.
equity.
Yep. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about what equity is, and I think sometimes people get equality and equity confused, and they kind of compare them to each other. And basically, equality is that everybody is treated exactly the same, and not really considering their individual differences. Equity is basically we get what people need. So it means everyone is provided with what they need to succeed. And in a school on a daily basis, that's really, really important, trying to figure that out. I want to go to the next slide. The visual kind of shows that. And many of you have probably seen this visual before at a baseball game, where equality is everybody gets that same box, regardless of their needs. Equity is we get them what they need to enjoy the baseball game. So if they need another box, if they need more support, we're going to try to do that for them. And then the reality is that sometimes from the start, people have some advantages. So equity is basically getting what our students need based on their backgrounds. So that's it.
So I have this next part, and this is why focus on equity. And there's kind of a couple of different lenses. Well, let me just go back and just talk about the difference between equality and equity. We talked about developing that foundation across our system. No problem. We talked about developing that foundation across our system. That question, what is equity? When we started doing some professional learning opportunities at the beginning of the school year, we asked that question of our staff, and we had a wide range of responses. And it was very interesting. After we finished some professional learning opportunities throughout the school year, we found ourselves having much of a more coherent and clear understanding of what equity is within a district and school system. And so that was a win for us already as a school system to define that. But then why focus on equity? Why is this important for districts to look at this? And there's a couple of pieces that we can look at. We can look at some data points. If we go to the next slide here, and we'll play this in a second. I thought it was really important. So Governor Tony Evers, at one time was the superintendent of schools here in the state of Wisconsin, and you know he really talked about Wisconsin having some very large gaps when we look at our academic data between various students groups, and for Wisconsin actually being known as having some of the largest gaps in the country. And we're just going to take a little bit about, this is a beginning of a training video around equity in educational systems that the Department of Public Instruction has released. And in the first about 16 seconds here, Governor Evers, he frames this for us. I thought it was nice to kind of hear that from him. So we're going to take just a moment just to listen about the first 16 seconds. I'll tell you guys when you can stop.
Hi, everybody. As many of you know, kids of color, kids that are learning English, kids with disabilities, kids that come from an economically disadvantaged background, all face challenges that their peers do not. But in Wisconsin, we have the unfortunate distinction of having the largest racial achievement gap in the country. And that's why I'm driven by this equity work. This training will focus on racial equity because it's a really important issue here in Wisconsin.
So again, just that little snippet, you can see that this has been a focus from the Department of Public Instruction, recognizing when you look at our academic data, we have some of the largest gaps in the country. And so it's important for each district in the state of Wisconsin to really self-analyze, take a look at your systems, take a look at your supports and think about, do all students have access and opportunity, and are we starting to close those gaps over time? So that's kind of from the state level lens, and I'm going to kick it over to Mrs. Loken to talk a little bit
Hi,
about
everybody.
local,
Many of you
the
know,
local
kids
lens
of color,
here.
kids that are learning English.
Go to the next slide.
So a huge part of the equity process, our journey down this road of equity, is helping all students feel like they belong in our school system. And one thing that's been really stark in terms of showing a need for this work is our own local data from our own students. So we take the Youth Risk Behavior Survey every other year with students in grades 6 through 12. And it has like 100 different questions on it. So this is just a few parts of those questions related to, do students feel like they belong at school? So in general, looking at all of our population, about 70% of high school kids feel like they belong, 73% of middle school kids feel like they belong. But what's important about those numbers is that when we look at specifically students who feel like they belong versus don't belong, when we look at mental health concerns for those two different groups, students who feel like they belong report mental health concerns at 43% at the high school, 46% at the middle school. Whereas if you look at the group of students that feel like we don't belong in this system, so that could be a student of color, it could be a student with disabilities, it could be a student from poverty, it could be a student of color, it could be a variety of different students. Of that group, 87% reported mental health concerns at Lodi High School and 88% at Lodi Middle School. So those are pretty staggering numbers, and these numbers are not much different than what we see across the county or across the state. Again, Youth Risk Behavior Survey data just looked at a few specific groups. So looking at our LGBTQ plus group, 49% feel like they belong. 72% of non-LGBTQ kids feel like they belong. Hispanic feeling like they belong, about 58%. White who feel like they belong, 71%. And other races that feel they belong, 45% versus 71%. So those are pretty stark numbers. And recently we met with a small group of students and former students, and to hear their personal stories about their education here in Lodi, some that were currently in school, some that were out of school for a number of years, and their stories haven't changed a lot over the years. And so it was really powerful that they were able to share some of their personal stories with us so that we could help guide this equity work that our district really needs. Just like every district in the area is on this same journey as the whole state is, as Governor Evers highlighted.
And then, so what have we done to develop some of that system-wide common understanding? One of the first things we did is read an article that's called Developing Windows and Mirrors. So the idea is that when you are using any curricular tool or any opportunity to provide windows into other people's lives or mirrors for people to see themselves. And it's not always the same thing for everybody, and so it's always thinking about, is this a window or is this a mirror? And if it isn't either, is there a way that we can make it such? So that was kind of the first one, and then the Equity Basics 1 and 2 were with Dr. Briggs. Dr. Briggs is an outside facilitator that has helped our district work on equity issues, and so the first one talked a little bit about your why in equity and developing relationships. And then number 2 went into a little bit more of one of the, for me personally, powerful examples was what's in a name. And so Dr. Briggs talked about he has 3 daughters that are, I think, like 15 to 19. And he said that Dr. Briggs is African American, and when his oldest daughter was born, there was prevalent research out, or very like popular in pop culture, that had identified if you had a more ethnic sounding name, that you were less likely to get an interview. And so Dr. Briggs was asked all of us, like how we got our names, family names, friends, you know, all these different reasons. And then he at the end talked about how he and his wife decided to name their kids based on names that didn't sound or would not inhibit them from, you know, future opportunities later in their life. And then the last one was just an opportunity for staff to reflect on what we've done this year and think about kind of what's next. And so then there were some opportunities for a smaller group to get together, and so that smaller group of staff have met and identified some priorities that would be potential next steps. And whoever's driving over there, if you give me the next one. So these are then additional activities that either are happening or, excuse me, these are activities that did happen. So I'm not going to read them all to you, but I am going to highlight a couple of them. So all staff had the opportunity to choose a PPG goal focused on equity, and specifically we used the book So You Want to Talk About Race, which was a very interesting book. It's not a like toe in the water kind of about race. It's a little bit more in your face, and it was very interesting to see staff reaction to that, like in just that it wasn't something, like I said, you just kind of comfortably eased into. And so that were multiple discussions on that during the course of the year. And then you can see their board, student, and administrator work in Dane County Equity Consortium, and just a culturally responsive training. And I'll let you guys take a look at the topics, and I'll be quiet for a second. Done, I'll kick it over to Ms. Fosbender.
Can I ask a question? Can we get a copy of that book?
Yeah,
I
I have
would be
extras.
willing to speak for Vince and say, I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
I have extras in my office, so.
Okay, well, before you leave. And any other board members want one?
So then possible next steps, here are some of the different things that we're looking at as a district and an administrative team and as a collective group of staff, is looking at, again, an equity team that would incorporate the staff, students, as well as possible community members. Finding an equity framework to just really leverage our future equity work and help us as we're coming up with those next steps. Finding a tool to evaluate our system, to dive into what are the things that we're doing currently or what are the things we could adjust or change and improve on. A tool for equitable decision-making, coming up with an equity statement to highlight each of the schools in the district. Doing some more professional development on creating those safe spaces, as well as implicit bias. Continuing to create student groups at each level, just again to create that sense of belonging, that first stage of equity work that we really want to dive into. And then continuing to analyze our resources to make sure that they're acting as windows and mirrors. Do you have any questions for any of us?
I'd say by reading this last slide and seeing what we've done in the last year, that it's a good start, but we have a ways to go, and it's not something we're gonna start and then finish right away, right? It's a continuing process, and so you're all shaking your heads yes, and so of course, yeah.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, so typically when you talk, one of the things that we've heard through the Dane County Equity Consortium, we had a podcast by Dr. Anissa Jackson, and she talks about equity works. It takes 7 to 10 years for districts or organizations to move through this work, right? Because really your focus a lot of times is on diversity. We want to get to diversity. You want to get past diversity into belonging, and then some of those pieces that are much harder, and take a lot of effort. But we also need to celebrate the milestones. So that's part of this today, is celebrating some of the milestones that we have and the things that we have accomplished. Because if we don't celebrate those milestones as well, it just gets overwhelming at times. Like, you know, to think that takes that long and we're not moving forward. We are moving forward, but it's gonna take time, right? And we also thought, you know, again, it's a good time for everything that's been going on in this country and in our state. It was a really good time for us to start to have these conversations, because our families are having these conversations, and to help equip our educators with more knowledge in these areas as well is really important.
I can't wait for a future board meeting where that first group, that equity team, gives us a report on
Yeah.
what's been happening.
Yeah.
That's gonna be amazing.
So again, we just wanted to give a quick, you know, not a long presentation, just kind of, you know, keep the board in the loop of everything that's been going on, keep the community in the loop, everything that's been going on. And then again, open up to any questions that any board member would have, as we can move on with our agenda.
When did you decide to do this? I mean, I don't remember this being, sometimes we have a June or July meeting where we kind of set things for the year. And of course, last year was such a fun year, we just canceled that whole.
Yeah, a lot of times when we start talking about, as we'll start talking about for next year, a lot of these things happen at our administrative retreat in June. So we met obviously much more last summer than we typically meet as administrators, administrative team. But this was one of the things that came out right away with everything that was going on in our country at the time, and just feeling that this was really important work. And when we sat down and started talking about what we were gonna offer for professional goals, right? The prior year, we had offered like 4 or 5 different possible professional practice goals for staff. Again, we wanted to narrow that down, just like we did everything else this year. We really tried to focus some things for our staff because of everything else that we're doing. And we really focused on technology and equity were those 2 things that we talked about. And I know we brought it to the, I want to say, contract review committee and had some conversation about it as well. But it just seemed like it was overdue, to be honest. And as you know, the board also got to participate in December in some of this work, because one of the things that happens when you start talking about, when people were talking about coming back to school in December, you know, being cognizant of what voices you're hearing, right? The people who are always coming to the board meeting are really important. We want to hear their voices, but also the voices that you don't get to hear at times, who can't get off work to come to a board meeting, or maybe don't have internet access to send you an email, or don't speak the language that you speak to be able to send you an email and advocate for themselves. So making sure that we are always focusing on all of our students. So it's just, that just became more of a focus, and it says the board had that opportunity in December. Our new board members are gonna have the opportunity this Thursday to have that same training. And then the board will have some more training through the Dane County Equity Consortium, which we meet once a month, but the board will meet in June, like June 24th will be another installment. So I'm on the board planning work group for that, so that should be coming out shortly.
Okay, thank you.
That's a really long answer to a really short question.
Well,
And I really love that when that first slide, you know, like just for the public, to the general, you know, population, it's,
That one.
there, that's
Yeah.
it. Because
No.
it just says it all, you know,
Well,
and the
and it-
words sometimes lose people, but that's it.
Well, and then again, the idea is not to make people feel guilty about,
No.
you know, the opportunities they've had,
Right.
right? And I have children, I try to do what's best for my children, but I also have to understand where my children fit on here, and where they started,
Right.
compared to other people have started. And so, we had done some of this work at the high school a few years ago, too, that's kind of built on this and talking about, you know, what opportunities do you have compared to other people? And I kind of went through a lot of them with my staff. I didn't make my staff say them out loud. I did. And again, where you are, what part of the country you're in, those things change. But I think it's really important. And I think it's also really important to think about the reality that sometimes we put roadblocks up for those who need the most, right? So not only are we not giving the box for them to see, there's a hole in the ground.
Can I ask if we've identified then what those boxes are representing? I know you said advantages, but can you go a little bit deeper on that? Have we identified that, or is that where the stage that we're at?
Yeah, so we're kind of at that stage. So some of those things are like, you know, just providing a computer to everybody. Like, so we provided a computer to everybody. That is over on the left-hand side. But what we need to provide hotspots for people, right? There's some people, just providing a computer didn't work. For some people did. My family worked fine. Most families worked pretty fine. But other people, we need to provide a hotspot. We need to provide something to help translate. So like when we started bringing kids back into school this year, at the beginning of the school year, right, we brought 140 some kids back into school right away for some of those very reasons, right? That we had some kids who just needed more instruction, that already had plans. So probably one of the few times you see that the kids who needed more actually got more at the start of our school year. So we're continually always trying to identify what each of those, you know, those boxes are, and what are the things that are getting in the way, and what are the supports that we need to provide for our kids. So one of the things we're looking at is like an ESL coordinator. Like we need to provide more supports to our kids who don't speak English,
Sure.
or are coming with a secondary language, right?
Sure. Yes, we do.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Vince was saying, that that's part of our work moving forward.
Sure.
That's part of the work of getting more seats and more voices at the table to really analyze and look at our system. You know, sometimes we put an after-school program in that sounds great, and it's gonna be a wonderful opportunity, but then looking at it and saying, do all students have access to that from a transportation lens, an affordability lens, things like that, and sometimes other individuals who haven't traditionally had a seat at the table, once they get at a seat at the table, can point out some of those things, and we can make some quick fixes, but it's definitely things we're looking at now, but it's work we need to do as we move forward.
So then I would assume same with roadblocks, or do we have that? 'Cause you said this one down here in the corner is a roadblock, digging them deeper. Are we identifying in the Lodi School District what that is? Do we have it laid out what it is?
Yeah. So again, that's some of the same work, right? We're trying to figure out what those things are. So like that roadblock of not having internet, like that was one, right?
Sure.
Or, so I was trying to address some of those. And some of them we don't know, right? And, you know, we think we do at times, and then you find out, and you sit down with families, and you find out we're totally off. Because, right, you're not walking in that person's shoes and understanding everything that's going on. So that's part of, again, continuing part of the work of what is interfering. What can we do so we're not digging a hole in the first place, right? That's the first thing, stop digging. And then secondly, what can we do to support our students?
Another example, just from like the technology, just from our COVID experiences, you know, that many middle-class families could adjust their schedule, work from home, and not everybody has that opportunity. So we had second graders at home all day long by themselves with an inability to communicate with anybody without a phone, and, you know, so that level of support too, you know, could represent a missing box in that regard too. So I don't know that our goal is to ever label each and every one of those boxes, because it's different for each marginalized group.
You know, and another thing we did this year is like delivering food, right? It's something we as a district have never done before, right? Delivering food. It's tough to learn when you haven't eaten. So making sure that we, you know, initially we had like set up days like, hey, come pick up food. Well, then you start thinking, well, wait a minute, not everybody has transportation. Not everybody can take off work to come get you know, they don't have transportation, and then they can't get off work to come get food. Like, how are we gonna help work with those types of things? So that's another piece that we identified this year, like, how can we help our families and reach out to our families and do a better job of communicating with our families, and make sure that we are providing the supports they need.
One of the nice things about doing this types of training with educators across the entire system, everybody gets this training, is our educators are making decisions every single day, multiple decisions that are affecting students, from how much homework am I sending home, what type of homework am I sending home, that thinking through that with an equity lens, right, sometimes can help you make a decision that hopefully will give equal opportunity and access throughout the system. So that's that's a nice thing about doing this, I think, building that foundation across, the district.
Good question.
Any other questions? Public input. Purpose of the citizen input agenda item is for the public to provide comments on any agenda item or to publicly address the Board of Education on items that pertain to school business. The amount of time allotted for each speaker will generally not exceed 5 minutes per person to allow all people who wish to speak an opportunity to be heard. However, the president may modify the time limits at his or her discretion. If the speaker has questions for the board, they'll be duly noted and responses will be provided in an appropriate manner, but the board cannot respond to individual questions or individual comments as part of a public input agenda item. As an additional reminder, the board cannot take action on any item that is brought forth during the public input session or on any item that was not posted on the meeting agenda. Citizen input is an important part of the board meeting agenda, and the board appreciates hearing from the community on issues concerning them and/or our school district. Hello, could you state your full name for everybody?
Yes. My name is Nicole McCurry. I currently have 2 boys in the Lodi Primary School. First of all, I want to thank the school district and the school board for being a district and board that allows public input, because I'm finding that there are districts that don't, and even though you guys may not always agree with what people say here, it's super, like, we as parents greatly appreciate you guys listening to all viewpoints and considering it, so I just want to say thank you for that. So today, I'm here to discuss the topic of masks, which I know is not specifically on the agenda, but I'm hoping that you guys will consider discussing it during the school reopening update section. I know the school district currently has a mask requirement that goes through the end of the school year, which I understand. But what I'm hoping that you guys will consider is making masks optional for recess and gym. And here's why I'm asking this. My son recently came home from school telling me that he couldn't breathe in gym class because of his mask. I was devastated and heartbroken that he had to experience that. I know right now it's somewhat cool outside, but warm weather is coming. And I'm greatly concerned about having kids running around doing lots of physical activity with masks, especially in the heat. I myself have worn a mask while exercising, and I can tell you it is very hot and not very easy to breathe. I ended up pulling my mask down because I couldn't catch my breath, and I don't want my children to have to experience that. With there being about 3.5 weeks of school left, I don't think this is too much of an ask to test the waters, and I'm asking you guys to please consider it. Secondly, Lodi Crew youth activities are currently following the school recommendation to wear masks even when outside. I understand why they are doing this, but again, most of these programs involve lots of physical activity and are outside. I would really like to get my kids into some of the summer programs, because we do love Crew, but I'm concerned about having them wearing a mask and running around in the heat this summer. Therefore, I'm asking you to please consider making masks optional for these outdoor physical activities. And finally, I would like to respectfully ask you to consider making masks optional for summer school, or again, at least for the programs in summer school that are outside or involve physical activity, like I know soccer and tennis are 2 off the top of my head. If you were to make masks optional for summer school, maybe this could be a good test of how it would go in the 2021-2022 school year. So I just ask that you guys can consider this going forward. And again, I want to thank you for your time and all the time that you guys put in. I know it's a lot of time that you volunteer to do all this stuff, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Is this just one?
There is somebody that's on,
Somebody online?
they're not signed up, I don't know if they came on wanting to do it.
Is there someone online on the Google Meet who would like to do public input? Now's your chance. If you turn on your mic. Does it say there's only 2 people on there?
There was only one, I just didn't know if this person on the
Right.
Google Meet wanted to.
Okay. So it's only Amber that's up there? Amber, did you want to speak to us?
No, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else on there?
No.
That's it, okay. All right, thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda items, and under this section, the items will be adopted as a group unless a board member requests a specific item to be removed from the consent agenda and addressed separately. 7:01, we have approval of minutes from 2 meetings. There was a reorganization meeting and then the meeting last month. We have the vouchers. We have a fundraiser request, one called Art for the Ocean. No fundraiser reports, no field trip requests. We have committee recommendation for approval. The Finance Facility Committee recommended a co-curricular base increase. And under other, we have all the summer school courses, and then we have our renewal of our 2021-2022 WIAA membership. Under resignation and retirement, we have LCAT project coordinator, middle school principal, middle school volleyball coach, assistant wrestling coach, assistant volleyball coach, swim coach, high school Spanish teacher, and OSC educational assistant. Under co-curricular, we have boys head varsity basketball coach, girls head varsity basketball coach, middle school assistant track coach. We have one head football coach and 5 assistants, and then 2 halftime assistants and 6 volunteers. We have boys soccer coach as head, and then 2 assistants, and then 1 volunteer. We have volleyball coaches for high school. We have a head coach, high school assistant, and a middle school head coach and an assistant. Under cross-country coaches, we have a high school head coach, 1 assistant, and a middle school head coach and a middle school assistant. Under cheerleading and football, we have 2 50% advisors and then 2 volunteers. Girls head soccer coach, tennis coach, senior class advisor, and a link crew advisor. Under community program crew, we have 1 crew instructor. And under regular staff, we have primary school LMC assistant, high school science teacher, summer school teachers, 28 of them, summer school support staff, 17 of them, IT support technician, elementary school OSC literacy coach, middle school life skills teacher, 6th grade math teacher and reading teacher, high school English teacher, high school math teacher, student service director, IT apprentice, youth apprentices, 2 of them, 4th grade long-term sub, special education assistants, and a 3rd grade teacher. Under personnel other, we have none.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with tabling of the link crew advisor and girls head basketball coach.
Second.
Motion by Angie and a second by Bill. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed?
I'm abstaining.
So we have 1 abstain by Barb Beyer
I abstain.
and 1 abstain by Christie. So it passes 5-0. And now we'll move on to the regular agenda. We have the 2020-2021 school reopening plan.
Yeah, so obviously this has been the topic, number 1 topic every time we get together.
Yep.
And we are now, since we last met, we have students back in school, full days, 4 days a week. So I thought I would just have our building principals, we will start with the primary school, just kind of give an update on how things are going for the board. And the board can ask questions.
So we're back in, and now we're starting to plan that, that end of the year process as well. I know that you had asked about how many students were online. I think that was a question from one of the board members. So right now, 12% of our students at the primary are online. But otherwise, really the teachers have been back into regular routines of recess, lunch. We have specials that are face-to-face, which is awesome, and we're beginning the assessment process, and so working through all of that. So right now, we're just continuing the safety measures as best we can, obviously, with the 3-foot distancing really between most students at times, and right now, I would say the feedback has been very positive regarding that, so that's helping us as we're planning for summer school.
And I would start off by saying that our staff has been amazing. 3 first days of school in 1 school year is pretty atypical, and the last one was probably the most exciting for people. Kids just were so excited to be back when they were split AM and PM, to be able to be like 1 class and see peers that had a second half last name that they couldn't see at school because we needed to have a structure to mitigate that risk. Staff's overwhelming comment was just how great it was to have all kids back in school, getting to have, school opportunities. So like Amy, everybody's been happy to be back. We've been assessing for a little while, so we were back for 1 week, then jumped right into forward exams because we needed to do that. We've also, for the first time ever, assessed online kids by bringing them in on Wednesdays. So that is wrapping up as well, and then next week we'll go into iReady, which is our 3-time-of-year local assessment, and then still trying to get in some individual reading assessments with some kids, and then also still have some time for instruction. So it's been an intense, end of the year. The end of the year is always intense, and this year's been intenser. But everybody, like I said, is very happy to be back. Like Ms. Fosbender said, we're using our mitigation strategies. Kids are good. You see kids with masks, they're pulling their masks, they're telling each other to pull their masks up, they got them, they know 6 foot distancing, they get out in the hallway to go to the bathroom, and you see them on the spots on the floor. The lunchroom we have 3 lunchrooms that we're using so that they can be 6 feet apart at all points while their masks are off. So it's been a really unique experience, but staff has pulled together and made it fabulous.
Mike, did you have a percentage of?
Oh, shoot, I do. So between the 2 buildings, we are 8.6% online. LES 3rd grade is 19%, LES 4th grade is 3%, 5th grade is 7%, and OSC is 6% as a whole, not broken down by grade level at OSC. Thank you, I'm sorry that I even had that up to tell you and then I forgot.
Middle school, things have been going pretty well. The procedures and protocols that we've put in place seem to be working, but to be completely honest, the longer this goes on, I think our middle school kids are a lot like the general public, and social distancing is certainly our #1 issue. Mask wearing's been great, but social distancing in the morning when students arrive, breakfast, lunch, dismissal, those are, I'm constantly saying 6 feet, and they'll move, and then I'll go back and say it again 2 minutes later. So that's probably our #1 issue. But overall, mask wearing's been great. Teachers certainly, I think, feel pretty comfortable with what's going on. Our numbers in 6th grade, I have 92 students in person, 11 virtual. That's about 12% that are virtual. 7th grade, 93 in person, 18 virtual. That's 19% the students who are virtual. And then 8th grade, 107 in person and 10 students virtual. So that's about 9% of 8th graders are virtual.
And I can start with the percentages as far as the number of students online. So for 9th grade, it's 23% of our students are currently online. 10th grade, it's 37%. 11th grade, it's 35%. And for 12th grade online students, it's 39%. And those numbers have fluctuated just a little bit. We have had some parents and students wanting to come back, and we do have the room to do that. And it's always a case of looking to make sure that our classrooms have the capacity to add more kids. We've done that. I've even had some seniors in the last couple weeks that have requested to come back because they want to end their career in Lodi back at school, and we have definitely made that accommodation and allowed them to come back in. So that's been nice. As far as the teaching goes, and I kind of knew how difficult it was to teach online and the students in front of you. And I just did some observations this week, and I am just amazed every single time I'm in the classroom watching our teachers working with, the 5 kids that they have at home and the, 15 kids that they have in front of them, and trying to do that, which I can never, I was a teacher, as most of you know. I don't know how I would have done that, and they're doing an amazing job. And I let them know that I couldn't even understand how you can get to that point where you have to be able to do that on a consistent basis, planning for that day to day, and then just dealing with every type of situation that you have to deal with during a class period. So they're doing a great job at that. As far as mitigation strategies, to echo what Joe Prosek is talking about as far as the middle school, it is difficult to keep them apart at 6 feet. Mask wearing's been pretty good, though, so they're willing to wear their masks. It's just all about routine with teenagers and making them know that it needs to be something that we continue to do. I can talk a little bit about athletics, just because we kind of winded down our fall to spring sports season, and that went really well, and we gave some seniors an opportunity to go to that last football game on a Saturday, which I thought was great, and there were probably close to 50 seniors that wanted to come, and we made enough room for them by getting some extra bleachers, and I thought that was it was a great day, it was beautiful out, football team played great, and then we had those seniors there to be able to watch their last football game, which is something that I think they really, really missed, being a part of a student section this year, so it was great to have that. Otherwise, things are going good, it's just all about graduation next, and getting there and getting through that day, so I'm excited about it.
Joe, how many graduates are there this year?
110.
Oh. It's coming up fast.
Can you tell us how the screeners have been going for families, filling them out? Are they participating well? Is it a struggle? I do apologize for those couple days. I try to get it in, but.
Christy, at the high school, it's pretty simple because the kids, we send the email to the students, and if they come in, their first block teacher knows, because of the spreadsheet that we send out right away, they know if their students haven't filled it out, and they just have them open up the Chromebooks, fill it out there, right in class in the first 5 minutes, just like taking attendance.
Older kids, I would assume,
Yeah.
with
The
coaching.
middle school, it's similar. If the students do not know for sure that their parents filled it out, we have them fill it out first thing in the morning.
Okay.
We're still, Pam and Leslie do a great job following up. I would say by 9 AM, we probably have them all.
Okay. Lunch count.
Yeah. I mean, it's just going through and reminding, hey, so-and-so hasn't filled the screener out, and then they'll log on.
So yeah, for the screener, I would say for specifically at the primary, so, you know, our families are doing an outstanding job on that, and I think what's important to share is just how that has helped with certain situations across the district, and just, well, I would say specifically, I guess, for the primary right now, that sometimes those screeners will then alert families of thinking like, oh, should I do this or not, and it allows us to follow up with them, which again is just, you know, ensuring the safety of the students that are in the building, or that may be coming into it. So, so really for the most part, it's really, you know, families do a great job. Every once in a while, there's people that forget, no worries about that. And then we just connect with the students. I've got about 3 staff that right away in the morning go, and any students that need to follow up, we ask them the questions and follow through with that, and then reach out to the families. Yeah.
For similar, vast majority are doing it. It's intended, I think it's serving its intended purpose of making people more aware and just, you know, checking each morning so that there's a conversation going on with elementary age kids and family to see how they're feeling, making them more aware of, you know, COVID-like symptoms. And there are definitely some families that don't fill it out for a number of different reasons, and we then do, just like Ms. Fosbender, we go around, or like all the other buildings, we go around, check, make sure everybody's doing good, and I think it's, in my opinion, it's an effective tool that is worth the time at this point, so.
And I just had one more question. You may not even have the answer now, and that's okay. We can follow back on this. Do we have data on, since we've gone into 4 full days in each school building, data on positive COVID tests? So I know that we send out those emails to students, but I'm just curious to find out in the older schools where you're reporting that social distancing may be a little bit harder, whereas younger students, we can keep them apart more. Is there data that we can look at to say, hey, you know, we're getting a lot more positive tests because of this, or it's not so much, like we're doing pretty good still?
I can't give you specific data on that, but I know with the few cases we've had, we've had a number of close contacts that have also gone out because of that.
Sure.
And to be honest, most of ours are related to athletics.
Okay.
This is one where we've had to shut down some teams for a while because of close contact. I'm not sure of how much spread has happened, maybe Vince can talk to this a little bit, but how much spread has happened because of close contact in school, but it has been very little from what I know.
Yeah, so the research, what's happened in Lodi is very similar to what research is showing, is there's very little spread in school because of mask wearing, social distancing, all the other mitigation factors that you have in place. And even with and that's why the CDC moved to allowed 3 feet of social distancing, because they were seeing very little transmission with masking at school. So we have, if you look on the website, there is a COVID dashboard that every week will show how many positive cases that we had. Knock on wood, last week is one of the first weeks we've had no positive cases in the district. But the weeks before that, we had like 4 and 4 the week before that. Again, there was no spread at school, but we had a bunch of kids quarantined out due to a positive case. And that was our biggest concern even at the beginning of the year, is when you have a positive case, especially now that you have kids at 3-foot social distance, If you're within 6 foot, you're positive, you're with a close contact. So even though you can now be 3 feet apart in school, if you're within 6 feet, you're still a close contact. So you're gonna quarantine more kids out. And then kind of going back to your screening question, so what happens, especially if a family member, and listen to other districts, and it's happened in our district too, where somebody will fill out the screener and not be honest, right? And send their student and, oh, it's just a cold, they just had allergies, even though they've never had allergies before. And then all of a sudden on Wednesday, they go get a COVID test, and they come back and say, oh, yeah, on Thursday, and then they send their kid to school on Thursday, and they come back on Thursday with a positive COVID test, and then like, well, they did have symptoms on Monday. Well, now we gotta go back and trace, not just Thursday, but then Monday when they had physical education, and who were they with recess, and so those type of things. It really takes a lot more kids out when we do have a positive case, based on that. So it's just really important, for our parents to know that if my student has symptoms, it's very inconvenient for me. I totally understand that if I have to go get a COVID test, my kid's out of school for a day or two. But if you send them with the symptoms and they and they're positive, you've taken 25 kids out sometimes. And it's inconveniencing a lot of people, because they're quarantined out. So it's just really important not to be sending students when they're symptomatic, because you can't tell the difference. It's, a lot of the same stuff that looks like a cold is exactly what has been our positive cases. But yeah, we've seen very limited, I think we've had what we would say about 6 transmissions in school throughout the year. I'd have to go back and look at my numbers for sure, but that's about where we were at. Yeah, I think that's 6. And as Joe said, several of them have been sports related. We've had a couple classroom ones as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other discussion about school reopening?
The only other piece, just to address masking, since it was brought up tonight. Again, at this point, I would not, I totally understand, right? We've had these conversations with kids being outside, kids with phy ed. As we just changed our rules for our athletes, we still requiring athletes who are gonna be in close contact to wear masks. So on soccer, they have to wear a mask. In baseball, certain positions, they have to wear masks. My son's a golfer. When he's on the tee box and when he's on the green, he's gotta wear a mask, otherwise he can take his mask off. If you're playing center field softball, you can have your mask off. So we're trying to adjust those, but then when we had conversations about masking at our conference level, we pulled in a doctor from UW Health, we pulled in the sports medicine doctor from Sauk Prairie Hospital, and they were part of our conversation, and this is kind of what they're still recommending, that we have our kids wear masks because when they can't social distance. And as Mr. Prozik talked about and others, we struggle to keep our kids social distance, right? And we send them off for recess, our kids aren't gonna social distance. So we still need to look at wearing masking. Now, will that evolve for summer school? I don't know, right? We're continuing to evolve our protocols what come with masking. And our hope is at some point, like if you wear a mask in your close contact, maybe you won't be quarantined out. Those guidelines may change. Or when we look at summer school, will we do something different for tennis than we do for soccer, right? Because like in the fall, we allowed our tennis kids to play without a mask on because they were across the court from each other, right? So versus soccer where you're in close contact. So we will continue to look at that. I wouldn't recommend anything changing from this point for the last month of the school year here.
I was only gonna ask, and I don't know if it's gonna be happening, but I know from my school nurse days, they ran the mile at the end of the year. And those kids would all end up in the office because they weren't in shape anyway. So because the we already had the thing where if they're in a race, they can take the mask off once they say go, maybe we could look at just for.
Yeah, it depends on what they're doing, right? If we can keep them separated, that's the hard part, right? So we take them out on a hike and you stay separated, all of a sudden next thing you know, there's 8 kids together, right, talking, and they're next to each other, and now
I was more concerned about the running, because I just know.
And our phy ed department is also very cognizant of what the activities they're having to do and really monitoring that and making sure our kids are safe. Again, talking to UW Health pediatricians and sports medicine, they are not concerned about kids wearing masks and any issues that's going to cause them. That's not causing, you know, CO2 to be building up or any of that things. Is it uncomfortable? Yes. Is it more difficult? Yes.
It's more difficult.
But it's doable. And again, you know, one of the doctors talked about, like, he's a runner. So last year when we were talking about this,
Right.
he took a 90-degree day and he went out to Blue Mountain State Park and ran for an hour. And he would tell you, it sucked wearing a mask, but I could do it. And I know I listened to one of the other Dr. DeMurray from UW Health. He works with the Badgers. A couple years ago, they had a Badger who was trying out for the 10,000 meters, maybe for the Olympics, like trying to be an Olympic team, but also had severe allergies. They trained with a mask. They ran that with a mask, right? And so it's not perfect, but it's also trying to keep our kids safe. Because one of the things that's happening, right, is we are, as a society, we're driving this virus. A virus is a living thing. We are driving it into our children because our adults are all getting vaccinated, and that's where it goes. And that's, again, it's safer to be there, but now we gotta continue to work on making sure they stay safe and get those numbers down, so we can start taking that step. And that's the hard part is, as we keep talking about, you just turning that dial and what is exactly the right time to turn that dial and how fast you turn it and making sure we're safe with our kids. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
802, support staff compensation.
Yeah, so we brought this to the Facility Finance Committee. So the board, as you can read there, the board approved a 2.51% increase for support staff based on the idea that that would change into a 25-cent per hour raise for our staff. And typically, that in a normal year, that's what would happen. Because we have to take our professional growth that staff earn every a staff member, if they're doing everything they need to do, every 3 years, they earn a professional growth bump. Well, those numbers are kind of lopsided in that framework. So this year's a year that has very little earning that, not because people aren't doing what they're supposed to be, it's just how the numbers work out. So in looking at that increase at 2.51%, when we started applying it, it gave the support staff a significantly bigger raise. So if we go, what we would recommend is we go back to the 1.8% raise, is what everybody else got. But still give them a 31-cent an hour raise, which is more than they were anticipating anyhow. So, and we have a memo there that kind of talks all the way through that. So we recommend that we rescind and declare void the motion that we passed on April 12th about that 2.51% increase, and then approve a pay increase of 1.8%. Or if the board does nothing, then we will just stay with the 2.51% increase for our support staff.
On the Facility and Finance Committee, the disparity seemed to be the difference between the percentage of increase and the 25 cents that was stated. So it sounds kind of odd to lower the percentage, but we actually wind up with more cents per hour. So we were interested in that. We want to support our support staff financially because they're really valuable to the whole thing. So I'd make the motion that we rescind and declare void the motion passed at the April 12th meeting to approve a pay increase of 2.1%. That came out to 25 cents.
So 2.51.
2.51.
Yes.
Okay. Motion by Bill and a second by Barb. Is there any further discussion on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Passes 7-0.
And I'd be interested in making the motion to approve a pay increase of 1.8. That comes out to, was it 32 or 35? 31 cents.
I seconded.
For the 2021-2022 school year?
For the 2021, 20,
Motion by Bill, second by Terry. Any further discussion?
all of those.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. Thank you. Strategic planning.
Yeah, I'll let you start with this, Adam. Do you want to share?
Sure. It's going very well, in my opinion. I mean, it's amazing stuff. We had one more meeting where the group got together and wanted to know exactly how the meetings with the public would go and what would their roles be and how would they facilitate those operations. And our advisor, Brad, was amazing, and the guy just knows, he's clearly good at doing what he's doing, yes. And so he laid it all out, and they had this group of people that we put together brings up the most amazing and salient points every time. And it's just like, wow, I'm glad you thought of that. Wow, that's really great. And so I think the 2 public meetings are gonna be phenomenal when we have them. And I think it's gonna accomplish the goal we want, right? To get that larger directive and public input that we're looking for.
Yeah, so just to echo Adam, we have 105 people, I believe, last time I checked, signed up for that event on May 25th, June 2nd, so there's still time for people to sign up who are watching. Just so people know, board members and administration will be there, but we'll be there to welcome people and thank them for being part of the process, but we'll not be the ones providing the input through this process, because the board has asked for the community's input, right? So the idea of kind of having the fox in the hen house, if we have a bunch of administrators or a bunch of board members sitting at a table and driving that process. We really have put it in the hands of this community group who have identified people, have called people, and then now it's out. If you drive by the 4 corners, there's a sign up. And I think there's one out by Highway P as well. And so if people are interested, please come. The idea is really just to get input from our community. We want to know, because as I said all along, since I've been hired, this is not Vince's school district, this is not Adam's school district or anybody else. It's our community school district, and we want to hear from them, from everybody. And there's quite a process that we will walk through over the 2 days. So if you're going to commit to it, please try to commit to both those days. And it seems like a long time, but that time will fly, and the different activities that we have put together for that, I think will go very well. So, and again, commend the board for asking the community and for the group you picked to put together, because they have been phenomenal, as Adam has said. They put in extra meetings than we had originally talked about, and have really been focused on and excited about this process and feel this is important, and from day one.
And they're also looking forward to taking that data or collective information and doing a report from it. They specifically are waiting for that process to happen so that they can then present that to us.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys have any questions?
So it's basically a 2-day event, so typically people would come to both days, not one or the other.
Yeah, they build on each other. So the first one really kind of, there's some community building, talking about some of the things you're happy about, some of the things you're not happy about, and then also talking some about the history of Lodi, and kind of bring that community back together and looking at our past. And then the second one is more kind of tilting it now towards the future. Like the first one's kind of looking back, and then the second kind of meeting builds on that, and like, okay, let's take those themes and point them now at the future. And it's a large group kind of conversation, then small group table work kind of, and just everything's being written down, and then we will analyze the themes that come out of there, right? So not one voice is going to drive any of those discussions, right? It's going to be the themes that come out of that whole, so that's why the community group was really like, the more people we have, the breadth and the depth of the community involvement, the better this will be.
Well, 105 people already is pretty exciting.
Yeah,
it
You know,
is.
that's because 150 was the cap, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Coming up?
Yeah, a couple weeks.
Okay, it's handbook time. Middle school, high school, elementary school, and OSC, and primary school. Parent student handbooks.
Yeah, so we do online registration starting here shortly for the following school year, so we need to have these done and ready to go. Obviously, there's some things that will get tweaked throughout the course of the year, like, as we update staff and things like that, but trying to get these in front of the board here always at the May meeting, so I really appreciate with everything else that our administrators have going on, for them to find time to put these together and get them in front of the board is always impressive, so I really appreciate them doing that, so we recommend approval of all of those handbooks.
It also gives us an opportunity to see all and read all of them from all the different schools. Stephen is not here anymore, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommended 2021-2022 revisions and changes to the parent-student handbook for Lodi Primary School, Lodi Elementary School, OSC, Lodi Middle School, and Lodi High School. I will second.
Motion by Barb and a second by Angie. Anybody have any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. And companion to that is the faculty handbook discussion.
Yeah, so again, very echoing the same thing, just, you know, again, as we're looking to finishing up this year, as I think our administrators talked about, but also like the eye towards next year, right? We have to get our stuff put together and ready for next year as well. We're already starting to plan for that. So I just recommend approval of these handbooks.
Motion to approve the 2021, or 2022 revisions and changes to the facility handbook for the Lodi Primary School, Lodi Elementary School, OSC, and Lodi High School. And what happened to the Lodi Middle School?
I kept mine out because I thought the new administrator should look at it, bring it, have their eyes on it.
And
This
you
one
really mean
doesn't have to be
faculty?
approved. I mean, technically, this is for faculty, so we need this by August.
Yep.
So it's not for the online registration, but I thought the new administrator should at least look at it.
So I made the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Bill and a second by Terry. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. And the third piece, the co-curricular code of conduct handbook.
And the third piece is always, as you said, co-curricular code of conduct. We will be having our fall sports meetings here before you know it, to start, again, planning for next year. So, you know, the information's there, and there's been very minor changes. This year, we really revised it. Probably 2 years ago, we did a total revision of the co-curricular code. So, again, recommend approval.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended 2021, 2022 co-curricular code of conduct.
I'll second.
Motion by Bill and a second by Angie. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. Defeasance, which is something we do every year.
Yeah, I would turn this over to Mr. Richter.
Where would you like me to stand?
The X? The X is gone.
There's a blue spot.
It's gone.
You're all.
So you can put it on my back if you want.
No, I'm good. So defeasance, just so that all of you are on the same page with us, defeasance is a method of over-levying your debt service to the extent of being able to pay off more, that way not incurring as much interest on that loan. And so what we've done over the last 3 years is, and I'm just gonna explain this generally, and then you can pass the motion. What we've done for the last 3 or 4 years is that we've had a levy rate of about 9.8. And so the board has strategically levied up to 11.13, which is about, it's been between about $750,000 $1 million of additional levy to pay down our current debt service. That has reaped, like, if we over levied $1 million, has reaped like $650,000 in savings, and has chopped our 30-year debt or 20-year debt service down a couple years as well. So we continue to do this, and it was a strategic move based on the concept of maintaining a levy at the same level so that our taxpayers don't see an increase. That's what taxpayers don't love, is this and that with their taxes. And so as we have a referendum coming up in the next year, hopefully this will work in the board's favor as you continue to talk about the referendum coming up. So we're just asking that you pass this motion. This is a formal motion put together by our lawyers, Quarles and Brady, and so it's in front of you. If you have any other questions about this, is the formal paperwork to finalize our defeasance. Yes, sir.
Why does it say dated March 1st, 2017.
That's the original.
Okay, it's all good. So, I'd like to make a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds, the establishment of an escrow account for the respect to the defeasance of certain of the general obligation refunding bonds dated March 1st, 2017.
As presented. As presented?
As presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Bill and a second by Julie. Any further discussion? So those are paying off the primary school, those bonds? Thank you. So we're saving money on the primary school. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. We have no first policy reading, we have a bunch of second policy readings.
Yeah, so there is a long list of policy reads from a couple, well, quite a few policy meetings ago. These were all first reads last time, just for our new board members, for policies. To come to the board, typically they go through the policy committee first, then they come to the board for a first read, so the board members can look at them. There's no action taken. There can be discussion at that point, but it doesn't need to be. And then they come to a second reading, and a second reading, we typically take action on them. And again, they can be all approved at once. You can approve them one by one. You can chunk them. You can approve none of them and or send them back to the policy committee. Bless you. You can do all those different things. And so again, there's quite a list. The 411 and 511 policies are really all were updated to match the changes that we made in Title IX. So we had Title IX policy, a lot of work that was done in that at the end of last summer because there were changes that were made. The rules came out in late June, late May. The rules came out from the federal government and they had to be in place, our policies had to be in place by August 15th. So there was a real mad rush to get those done, and then we wanted to make sure that our other policies aligned to the policies we put together. So that's where, if you go through 411, all the different rules and exhibits, all the way through 511, it's our non-discrimination. That was where those updates came. Policy 420 rule came, there was a piece of that where, let's go look back, but it was having a conversation about us having to transport a student throughout the course of a year once they became homeless. So we had to make a tweak to that. And then the policy committee has also been working with a gender inclusion policy procedure. And those and gender name request form that goes with that. And we worked with our GSA club at the high school to kind of put those policies together as well.
We worked on that policy for months.
I was gonna say, after reading all of that, they did a great job.
Tiffany, I think so.
Yes.
Did a really nice job
No,
on that.
that
I
was-
wish I could take credit
It
for
was
that.
inclusive.
Months worth of work.
Right, I will make a motion to approve the updates to policy 411 non-discrimination harassment student, 411 rule, 411 exhibit, 411.1 student and staff non-discrimination harassment and bullying, 411.12 anti-bullying, 411.2 non-discrimination sexual harassment student, 511 non-discrimination in employment, 511 rule, 511.12 non-discrimination anti-bullying staff, 511.2 non-discrimination sexual harassment staff, policy 420 rule 2, children and youth in transition homeless procedures to implement the McKinney-Vento Act, policy 411.3 gender inclusion policy and procedure.
Second.
Motion by Barb and a second by Julie. Any further discussion on these policies?
So I have some questions on it. I'm assuming this is gonna be in the gender inclusion document. I opened up the document, it just says Board Docs LT. But it's letter E, access to gender segregated activities and facilities, and it's discussing the use of restrooms. And Vince was very kind to answer many questions that I had today about this, and I just want to publicly thank you, because I know that you're very busy, but you took the time to respectfully walk me through this. I'm having a hard time understanding this one, because I feel like the wording opens it up for some error on our end as a school district. And I want to state by saying that I am for making a place for every single person to feel safe and to feel protected and to feel loved and to feel included. I don't want to marginalize anybody for whatever they believe in. However, I feel like the wording, I'm going to try and find it for you. The use of this type of restroom will be decided by the student, and no student should be required to use an alternative restroom because of their gender identity or expression. Whereas I agree with allowing a student to be able to feel safe and use a restroom provided for them. I think that this leaves it open for males to use female restrooms and females to use male restrooms. And so for my daughters that are going to school, my son that's going to school, I don't want it to become the norm that any male at all could ever walk into a restroom where I have daughters who are entering their menstrual phase of life, or my youngest daughter who is susceptible to whatever and just pure and innocent and doesn't know anything, and same with my son. So I would either ask for us to pull this out and have further discussion on it so that we can word it so that it can be appropriate, or have a greater understanding of what is allowed in our restrooms on our campuses.
But this is talking only about a single stall restroom for only one person would be using at a time, correct?
So one of the things that Christy and I talked about was the wording, right? The wording could be taken either way, right? The wording could be taken as we're talking about whether we're requiring kids to use an alternative restroom or not. Or it could be taken to say, students get to choose which restroom they get to use. We can't make that choice for them. And in talking to our attorney, and I appreciate Christy's questions today. Christy asked a lot of great questions and had me dig in a little bit deeper in this. So typically we're talking about transgendered students at this point, right? And the courts have ruled on this pretty clearly, and I know I shared something with Chris. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. Yeah, because I know it was late, and I know you had practice. So the court has been ruling pretty clearly on schools cannot tell transgender students which bathrooms they need to use. They have a quote I would say. I brought my glasses for a reason. And so what I did is I shared, if you go back, and you all get it, so our new school board members wouldn't have gotten this, but the Wisconsin School News, the Wisconsin School magazine that you get on a monthly basis, in their March edition, Boardman and Clark had a recent legal developments regarding transgender students and employees. And I'll be honest, I hadn't got through that one yet. So, but as I read through this today, it just says very clearly, in working through all these considerations, it's important to keep in mind the conclusion of Whitaker regarding the use of restrooms, and take note that prior efforts to prevent transgendered students from using bathroom facilities consistent with their gender identities have been uniformly rejected by the courts. So they reference a Supreme Court case that happened a few years ago, and then the Whitaker case is actually a Wisconsin case, Circuit Court 7, which is, when you look at the circuit courts, you don't always have to, we have to follow anything that happens with Circuit Court 7. Obviously the courts a lot of times are in line, sometimes not, but we always have to follow Circuit Court 7, and Circuit Court 7 was the Whitaker case. And what this is saying is transgendered students can use the bathroom which they identify towards. And our attorney would say, there are districts who push the other, like, no, you can't. They say that's you will lose that argument almost every single time. So identifying that. So that, again, I appreciate Christy, and I appreciate Christy's concern. I do, as a parent of a 6th grade daughter as well. But I also know that we don't have a lot of students who are doing this, right? It's not that students are, when we've had students request this, or tell us that they're going to do this, it's been for a reason, right? It's not like we have a lot of students who are jumping into the girls' bathroom or jumping into the boys' bathroom because there's, you know, that there has to be a pretty significant reason for them to do that.
Doesn't the letter B though offer the
Right.
ability for any student to use a bathroom if
A
there's
single
no-
one, yeah, so we have a single, so we have single, but what
Yeah.
but after I read the first one a couple times, it really is saying that if a student wants to use,
Right, but if the other student is uncomfortable with that student
Yep.
using the bathroom, they can go.
any
use a
student can use,
different bathroom.
right, our single stall bathrooms, throughout the district, any student can use them. You don't have to give me a reason, right? You don't have to be a student who's transgendered or going through a transition or any other reason. At the high school, we have a locker room that, is a small locker room, for students, and it could be for any reason, right? It could be a student who's uncomfortable changing in front of others. It could be a transgendered student. It could be, any reason that somebody would want to change somewhere else. So there's other bathrooms as well.
So this policy doesn't prohibit a school from saying, you know, like, say a student is inappropriately going into the opposite gender bathroom. I mean, you can still, as a, you know, administrator, say, stop doing that, or no, that's not allowed. This is not free
Right.
reign to do anything you want. This is specifically addressing students who have, you know, generally identified as.
I feel like this wording is not specifically addressing them. I feel like this wording is leaving it open to anybody, because that was a specific question that I asked you.
Yep.
Anybody coming in to watch a sports game, any
Yep.
volunteer, any
Nice.
umpire. And that's where I am falling short in this policy. Why create a policy with this wording that can leave it open? If we're gonna let transgender students do that, that's not my issue. My issue is that this is opening the door to any person on campus.
But it says students, it doesn't say.
But again, to Christie's point, the top of the policy talks about the scope. And this says the policy applies to the entire school community, including educators, school and district staff, students, families, and volunteers.
So, someone who's identified as transgender, let's say they were born male, and some of them are not born male or female, but let's say in this particular case, they're born male, they're transgender, they're no longer male. They are now female, because they have chosen that path. So they would go into a female restroom. There's no checking and there's no questions asked or anything like that. And that is the way we started this whole meeting, with equity, right? That is equity. So there's no way to check anyone at any place to see if you're on or off or what you are. And that's the way the future is. And
So
that
then why do
starts-
we have labels on our bathroom doors?
Right, and in
There's-
other countries, they've
shouldn't. In other
gotten rid of
countries, they
those.
don't.
They've gotten rid of those labels. So-
And, I mean, I remember thinking about this when I was still a school nurse, and I thought we'd be better off and have, you know, you could have male or female bathroom if you wanted to, but you have a either sex bathroom, because when we travel in
We
Europe,
created that within all of our
that's
schools.
what they are.
We have a separate bathroom, a gender-inclusive bathroom in all of our schools. So I'm sending my second grader to school knowing full well that if any male that is on the campus at any time can walk into that, and we're going to normalize that, how is my daughter going to feel? How are my children going to feel? That's not equity to me, because now they are put at a disadvantage, and now their mental health is at stake. Because my daughter, who is entering puberty, should never have to manage those facts of life and feel so uncomfortable with that, knowing that a man at any time could be into that bathroom. That's all I'm saying here, is that the wording
Right,
is leaving this wide open.
But they're not a man.
But
I'm
Christie,
not talking
No, I
about
understand
transgender
Yeah.
people.
Christie's argument is
I understand
any
both
man
sides.
could go
I
in
get
there.
it, I understand both
Yeah.
sides, right?
Then they are a man.
So the
They're
question.
not gonna be doing that, though.
But the question would be, does this policy, I think with Christie's argument is, does this policy need to go back to the policy committee and address that,
hash out the wording.
hash that out?
That's what I'm trying to
differently.
think.
I don't either, that's,
It's
I mean,
gonna
I,
be tough, but.
I think we just have to be careful that we can't, at least from Vince's reference, and I did read through the legal information that you sent today too, Vince, is that putting in a policy, you have to use the bathroom of your biological birth is not gonna fly.
Right.
Because that's exclusive instead of inclusive. So we can certainly work on changing the wording to make it more clear. But in checking with several other districts in the area today too, I said, like, how would you interpret this sentence? And every district responded with, it's the student's choice. In our district, it's the student's choice.
They're not thinking the other way.
They weren't thinking about what adults might come to a game and use the
Right.
bathroom.
And I guess from my perspective, like any public area, whether you're in the mall or the grocery store or anywhere else, I mean, you're always, people are going to use the bathroom that they identify, that their gender identity is part of, like, in any public area.
Well, and then I would just go back to if your child's not comfortable using a bathroom where other people may come in, then they have the option of using the single stall bathroom.
yeah, and again, this is not an easy issue, right? So I mean, that's, I
It
mean,
took us
it's.
4 months in the
Right.
policy committee
So,
to get
so
through
it's,
this. So-
again, it's not an easy issue for us to deal with, it's not an easy issue for anybody to deal with, so, and that's the conversation Christy and I had today as well. Like, it's not anybody trying to exclude anybody or anything like that, it's just trying to work through, there's not, it's difficult, and,
Because
Well, can we vote?
B says that any student who's not comfortable,
Right.
it doesn't mean literally any student who's not comfortable can use the private single stall restroom.
but to Christie's point, if her daughter's in the bathroom and somebody
Right.
walks, you don't know that, right, beforehand.
Right, but then it's about having your child have that forethought of knowing this may happen, and if that makes you uncomfortable, then you just go and use that, right? That's just
So,
parental teaching. Again, I don't know how we change the wording.
let's say we
to
don't
keep
have
it
this policy.
legality.
Let's say this policy's not here, and a man walks into a female bathroom, right? It's not something that happens on a daily basis, it's not something that happens. This policy's not gonna make that happen.
Well, you're not gonna make it stop. Somebody, grown man that is here for a whatever, after hours thing and wants to go, this policy is not gonna stop someone like that from doing that.
Right,
I'm
no matter
sorry.
what it says.
Yeah, no matter what it
It's
says.
not gonna encourage them
So
to do it.
I don't think this
That's
discussion is
anecdotal.
about that, it is about the transgender students and,
That's completely anecdotal.
Yeah.
If we don't
Yeah.
know that, we don't know that this policy is going to evoke that or not evoke that. It's completely anecdotal. That's yet to be told, and that's why I'm fighting for this.
yeah.
I understand
We
what
really-
you're fighting for. I don't know how we word it differently and still make it legal. And I don't know how many people that are coming to our district are gonna read our policy first to see what they can and cannot.
I can tell you who has read it and are very proud of it is some of our high school students. And the feedback that we got from the students as we worked through this process and shared different drafts of this. So I would invite, if you send it back to the policy committee meeting, I would definitely invite some of those students to come and speak to the language in the policy as well.
I made a motion. I would like to vote on it.
Okay. So is there any further discussion before we go to vote?
Well, the question is, do you wanna pull that one out and send it back?
I don't for my motion.
Your motion is on the floor, okay? So we would have to vote that down then. Motion stands. Might as well do a roll call. Angie,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Barb,
Yes.
why do I have Angie on there twice, sorry. Julie,
Yes.
Christie,
No.
Bill,
I'll try no.
Adam, yes. Did I get everybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Who am I missing on here?
There's only 7 of us.
I know, and I have Angie on here twice. Okay, so, we had 2 no's, right?
Yeah.
So it passes 5-2.
Well, let me ask a question before we go on.
Yeah.
Are you allowing for administrators or teachers to try to, what's the right word? Monitor that? Who goes into which bathroom?
I don't think anything's gonna really change. I
That,
honestly don't
that
think
wouldn't be an
anything's
easy deal either.
No, again, I don't, having been in education for 25 years, this has definitely not been an issue. Really, the issue's been for students who are transitioning and transgender and not feeling included that, and to be honest, most of them would choose to use this, I shouldn't say that, I can't, in my experience, the students I've worked with would have chosen to use a single stall bathroom typically before they've gone.
And I can second that as a school nurse,
Yeah,
middle school
so,
and high school.
because again, they're struggling, typically, and again, I can't lump everybody together, so, it's very difficult to be a high school student or a middle school student who's transitioning, and they are working their way through it, so I have found in my experience, students will, but there are others who are like, who use a single stall, but there are others who are like, you know, feel strongly and feel like this is my right and I get to do that. But typically, we don't see other students going in there, right? And that would be the question, right? If we had that issue happen with an adult or anybody else, like, because typically we are pretty aware of students who are transitioning and not our staff, our counseling staff is, and, you know, we would walk through that process. If we had complaints or things like that. That's a really messy way to answer that question, but that's part of what we would do.
Is there a way to, for example, throw out the idea of reviewing it in a year to see, you know,
I think, honestly, all policy is on review all the time. Every single policy we have is always up for review at any time.
I'm just attempting to communicate, you know, is there a way to see if it's working?
Well, if it's not working, right, it'll come back here.
We'll know when
very quickly. Or it'll come back to the policy committee very quickly, I would think, because we're gonna have to address it if it doesn't work. I don't think this, again, this doesn't really change, it just kind of codifies what's already been, what we've been doing. And our, you know, legally what we would have to do, if we didn't have the policy, we would still have to legally allow students who are transitioning to use the restroom of their choice.
Okay. Thank you.
As I said, it's a very difficult topic and brings a lot of emotion and concern, and, but again, all legitimate conversations to have, and I think the board just experienced how difficult this is, right, and it's not clean, and that's okay.
And it's hard on students too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Gifts and donations.
I make a motion to accept with great gratitude the $500 donation from Ice Age Alliance to Summer Saunters Program, and $500 donation from middle school truckers, also the $500 donation from the National FFA Foundation Incorporated to the Lodi FFA chapter.
And I'll second that.
Motion by Barb and a second by Terry to accept these donations. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. Administrative reports. LCAT. Who gets to do LCAT now?
I haven't been at a meeting yet.
No, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Most of these are gonna have a whole lot.
Terry,
Yeah.
I did put their report that they submitted, at your spot there for you.
Oh, that's why that's there. Okay. Shall I read it to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, here, let's do the Vince. Okay. After a year of amazing work, despite COVID restrictions, I am sad to announce that Margaret Finkel has left our project, did I say that last name right? Okay, thank you. Our project coordinator position to become the state trauma coordinator through DHS. She will be missed by us. We are currently working to fill the open position. So if you know anyone with a health education background or even someone who wants to make a difference in our community, let me know. With the Drug-Free Communities Grant that supports LCAT's work, we have annual reporting requirements to keep the funding going. That reporting is all put into an extensive report that you can review if interested at, and there's a really big long link. This report is a reflection of, and if anybody wants that, we can get that to you. The report is a reflection of what is going on with youth across the nation. The Lodi middle and high school students will be taking the Youth Risk Behavior Survey in the fall, so we will host a data summit next winter to review our local youth data. Our next meeting will be Thursday, May 20th, which it's not now, from 11:30 to 1 p.m. We will hold the meeting in person with social distancing in place. We will offer individual wrap sandwiches and snacks. All board members are welcome, so please let Paula Anger know if you would like to attend. We will be revealing a new video discussing the Lodi Pride campaign, discussing the emergence of Delta 8, planning National Night Out, and updating the group on the interview process for a new coordinator. Your input is valued and welcome. Last but certainly not least, LCAT would like to say a huge thank you to all of the school board members, administration, and staff during this unprecedented time. It has certainly been a year plus like no other, and watching the time spent, workload created, and the diligent service to the district in order to do what is best for the kids has been humbling to witness. Thank you and stay well.
So the meeting on May 20th from 11:30 to 1 p.m.
Is that
is not on May 20th anymore.
Right.
It's now on June 17th. So.
June 17th.
Yeah, June 17th. Same time. Let me get back to where I was, sorry. Next, we have student services.
Just a few things to highlight. We had a training, I just realized it's not attached, so Mo, maybe I can, if we can upload it after. I had 2 attachments about the LGBTQ training, just some basic knowledge and background information that we had, that we did with our staff on April 28th through the Welcoming Schools organization. So I will add those if I work with Mo on getting those into board docs so you can see those. I also grabbed, I thought I had 4 or 5 extra copies, but Terry, I have a copy of that book that you requested, so I can share that. We just finished our last book study, so we finished the book. And we just had some really great conversations, and the whole goal was to really just start to open the door to conversations about equity and to kind of reflect on our own experiences and how our own experiences and our own implicit bias come to our world of work and how that's impacted. So great discussions. We had about over 100 people that participated, so that was exciting. Social emotional learning and mental health, we were awarded a grant from Dane County. All the districts in Dane County could apply, but since we're partially in Dane County, we were able to apply as well. So we received a grant for $43,000 that will include some training related to social emotional learning and also some materials to improve sensory spaces. So that might be alternative seating, it might be other fidgets, it might be sensory equipment for their sensory spaces, but some funds to improve those spaces. And then a mental health fund with $5,000 in it to essentially kids that maybe can't access mental health and need outside therapy or need something above and beyond what the school can offer, that we can offer the family some support in trying to get that service if they can't afford it or unable or uninsured, that type of thing. So we'll have kind of a little pool of money to help if students are in immediate need.
Wow, that's great. So would that go out to, I mean, obviously it'll go out to everybody, but how will you get that out to everybody so that people know, right, who are struggling with this today and they go, oh, I just don't have the money.
Yeah.
And then this message comes to them and they're like, oh, thank God, right?
Right, and we've worked with our student services staff, so our counselors and social workers and school psychs, because generally they're the ones who are kind of on the front lines and working with the families. Because we have, through our school mental health grant, had not as much money, not a $5,000 pool, but one of the requirements of the grant is if there is a student that's slipping through the cracks and isn't able to get the support they need, that we would provide that. So we've done it in like 3 cases this year, through our mental health grant, but, this would be in addition to that, so.
Great, thank you. Lodi Primary School.
Yeah, so just a couple quick things. One is the Heritage Park in Drumlin's Den. I'm excited to share that we are going to finish a project that had started, or well, it's been going for a while, but last year we were gonna add on some things, we took a pause, but we met with the people that are gonna be installing it, so we'll have an additional piece in the 4K area, a monkey bar, and then additional swings, so that's very exciting. And then the other big thing is actually connected between our 2 schools, is the movement hallway that Val Bilkey and the Michaela Lee have put together for the schools, just to, again, to increase some of the movement and just give kids an opportunity to keep engaged throughout different breaks. And so we've got a short little clip of video of what that looks like.
Yeah, I was really curious about that.
No, just said, Val and Michaela were working on it, started at the primary school, so now if you came to our school, the stops along the hallway are down as well, so you'll see only Val and the primary school, but it's there now for us as well.
Hello, Lodi learners. I have created this video to help introduce our new movement hallways to you. With our new exciting movement hallways, we have some expected behaviors that we need to go over. But first, I want to tell you about the purpose of these movement hallways when you see these animals and footprints along the wall, along the floor. The purpose is for us to be able to incorporate some more movement in our day and help us get our wiggles out so that we can be the best learner that we can be. Oftentimes, if we're sitting in class and we feel like we have so much energy and we need to be able to move, it makes it a lot harder for us to focus. So this is one way that we can get some of that movement in and get some of that extra energy out. You could use the wiggle walk on the way to the bathroom. You could ask your teacher if you notice that you have lots of extra energy, if you can go take a wiggle walk. And you can also, as a class, some classes might choose to do it on their way to a special or to the bathroom. With our wiggle walks, it's really important that we follow the expected behaviors. The expected behaviors in our movement hallways is that we keep our voice volume between a 0 and a 2. We want to make sure that we're not too loud, that we are disrupting the classes around us. The same goes for our feet. We want to make sure we're using our whisper feet, because when we're jumping around, it's really easy for our feet to make really loud, thudding noises. And so we want to make sure when we're landing, we make our feet as quiet as they can be. Some other expected behaviors would be about when we use the movement hallway. If we're on our way to somewhere in our class, our teacher says, now is not the time for the movement hallway, we make sure we walk right through the hallway like we normally would with our hands at our side, walking forward. And if we are on our way to a fire drill or an evacuation, any of those emergencies, those would not be the time to use the movement hallway, because we have to get to where we're going as fast as possible. The same would be if we're headed out for the bus.
Well, you want to skip to the next part, so now that you all know how to use this, there's a couple, yeah, sorry.
We know the rules.
Now you know the rules.
Super
You
cute.
can see a
the way-
couple pictures of kids.
I have some friends who help.
Sorry.
It's just so cute.
And they're alongside the 6
At
feet.
the crab, you're gonna crab walk all the way down the green line. For the drift, you're gonna make yourself tall, reach up high, and walk on your tiptoes.
Oh, this'll be.
At the horse, you're gonna gallop. For the bear, you're gonna do a bear walk. Try to make each of your hands and feet match up with the bear paw prints. At the penguin, you're gonna do your best penguin waddle. For the caterpillar, you are gonna walk your hands out and then walk your feet back up to your hands and keep on repeating it till the end of the green line.
So it just gives you a sample of what it looks like.
For the sea star,
That is absolutely adorable.
Except when those boots are all laying all over. It could be part of the, it could be part of the cleanup, you know?
That's extra practice. That's there's stationary stuff that's taped to the floor, and then there's the boots that are just like bonus.
They can crawl around.
We're gonna put some in here for our administrative team meetings as
Yeah,
well.
there you go.
Oh my gosh.
Do we get video of that?
Absolutely, we can follow up, I can take some videos. So,
That was a great idea.
yeah.
Yeah. And then Nick, Student Services.
Yeah,
Or-
so, yeah.
Student Representative.
Just to sum things up, I know it's a really busy time of year for the high school and just the schools in general. But our spring sports started in mid-April and now they go to the end of June. Our AP tests started last week, and the written ones go to the end of this week, and then I think there's a week break, right? And then the online ones. And then the FFA plant sale is going on right now, so make sure you get your plants. And then, just like I said before, the students are just preparing for the end of the school year and then looking forward to the summer.
Thank you. And then Lodi Elementary School.
And I hit a lot of the highlights of the report in our reopening. The one thing, and Ms. Fassbender talked about movement hallways, so we gave you that update. The last part is just some pictures at the bottom that show you what classrooms look like at 3 feet distancing, and then the recess breakdown. So we've changed our recess a little bit. It used to be more like a cross, and based on kid and recess supervisor feedback, we made them like vertical strips, so that if that section of the field that gets wet, we kind of just contract that whole part, and there's still ways for kids to play. Kids were also like wanting to play with like kickball and stuff, and so they were up against schools, so we're getting quite a collection of balls on top of the roof, so we used that strategy as well. So, and then there's just a picture of recess.
Okay, thank you. Middle school.
Yeah, I just want to highlight a few things in the report. And I wanted to share with you today, we had 5 groups of 5th graders over to kind of do some transition work, which was really cool. So we had OSC and then 4 separate classes come over. Abby did a great job giving them a detailed tour, and then they had a nice Q&A session with me. But as I've mentioned years past, this year is a little bit different, but anything we can do to try to help reduce the anxiety that they have is certainly beneficial. And it normally stems around getting lost, and I try to explain to them, I think the elementary school is way more confusing than the middle school.
It is.
Being late to class, and I'm like, you have 3 minutes to most of the time go 1 class down, and then of course, they can't get their locks open. So those are the big things, but anything that we can do to help reduce that is beneficial. And I just want to highlight some students. I mentioned at a few meetings ago how we were in the Yahara River Riders. We had 2 students who are finalists, Jade Dolmas and Ava Ballwig, and Ava actually won first place for her entry. Really cool. Want to thank
I have
Kip.
medal and ribbon in my office for those students, by the way, just came in today. So.
Big shout out to Kip Nordstrom, who's also retiring this year, but he's taken this on for the last few years for students who want to participate. And then, as you are aware, we had to replace our entire music department at the end of last school year, and I have to tell you, we have, I really feel 2 outstanding musicians and teachers that we got, Ashley Gulbranson and Marlena Zimmerman. And they were able to enter, a number of kids chose to participate in solo ensemble, and I wanted to highlight Noel Hack and Noah Street, both 7th graders who earned a score of 1, the highest score possible in the solo ensemble, and 3 8th graders, or 2 8th graders, Sasha Rudnitsky and Catherine Zychek. Sasha earned a 1 in piano solo and became a state qualifier, which I have to say I think is the first one since I've been here from the middle school. And then Catherine earned a score of a 1 and a 2 in her 2 solos as well. So I want to give a big shout out to those kids and those teachers for putting that together.
Thank you. And then high school.
So, Mr. Prosek, that was 2 minutes and 44 seconds, .89.
I was gonna tell you all that the reason I'm leaving is I've been trying all year to have John to keep his board report short and failed miserably, so I realized it's time for me to go.
It's not gonna happen.
My goal is to get it under 2 minutes and 44 seconds, which I don't think.
But he was long tonight.
Yeah, it was long tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so, couple things. First of all, we just had Aspire testing, and it was very much a challenge because it was on a Wednesday, so we had to bring some kids in, we had to bus some kids in. We had about 80.3% of our 10th graders take it, and about 90% of our 9th graders, and I want to give kudos to Grant Lemke, one of our guidance counselors, to organize all that, and all of our staff members that were willing to facilitate that test in their classroom, so I really appreciated that. Advanced placement tests, Nick mentioned that a little bit. It's very much a challenge because there's lots of ways you can take the AP exam this year, and trying to schedule that in the school and outside of the school has been a challenge. So again, thank you, Grant. US News Best High Schools came out, and we were ranked as one of the top high schools in Wisconsin. 6 factors, including that: college readiness and reading, math and proficiency reading, math performance, college curriculum breadth, and graduation rates. And I think Vince mentioned this one time, that it is not just about the high school, it's about all of our schools and what they have done to get them ready for high school. So much appreciation to all of our schools and what they've done to get them ready for our school once they get there. We finished Spirit Week, April 26th to May 1st. The theme was Overcoming the Storm, which really made sense because of COVID, and also we played the Kiwanee Storm in football. So there's some pictures in there you guys can take a look at. Included some toddler trivia. That was one day, so you can see Robin Crow, Jason Marshall, Whitney Roach, and Renee Moldenhauer. Some toddler pictures of them. Spirit banners were hanging in some of our local businesses for about a week, and now they're in the school. And again, I want to appreciate Willow Tree Wellness, Karate America, Lodi Sausage Company, and Burns Appliances for their willingness to let us hang them there. And that's something that we're going to do every year now. So we thought it was a great addition. I wanted to thank, there's lots of staff members here on this list for helping with interviews. It's a long process. We had some really, really good candidates. So I won't read all of their names, but I wanted to recognize them in the report. It does take a lot of time. In fact, sometimes it takes the entire day. And then you sit and talk about those candidates for another 2 hours in some cases to try to figure out which one is the best fit. So I really appreciate the time and energy people have put into that. And then finally, we just had Fine Arts Night for art, forensics, and the winter play. We had that in the PAC this year. And I wanted to recognize Ann Lemke, Renee Moldenhauer, and Shelley Pear for forensics, Miss Beanie Ludlum for her work with the winter play, and then Whitney Robarge and Dwayne Daly for all the work that they do in art. And that is it.
Did you time it?
I did not.
Way longer.
No, it was longer than 2.4.
Yeah, I know. So, thank you.
That's okay, we love to hear your report.
I'm sure.
And then Nick, curriculum.
Yeah, curriculum and instruction. So, schools across the state have been working through the state assessment process. So you heard about the ACT Aspire. We are also in the middle of our board exam window, which students in grades 3 through 8 take. We also have our access testing, which is the state mandated testing that we have to do for our English language learner population. There are some thresholds that are typically in place. It's a 95% participation rate threshold. If we fall below that on some of our federal reports, we are typically going to be dinged, or districts across the state would be, for lack of a better term, dinged. Districts across the state received a notification from the Department of Public Instruction that a waiver that they have requested to the feds have been granted, so that will not be in place for the current school year, that 95% participation rate. That's good news. We're trying our best to honor that request by the state to get those assessments done, but as you heard, it proves difficult, especially with some of our students being virtual. But we are offering opportunities on some of those Wednesdays for students to come in. We'll provide transportation to do those assessments. We're not only right now focused on finishing this current school year strong, but we're also planning for next school year. And that's the difficult thing about sometimes these administrative roles, is supporting our educators and students and finishing strong, but we have to have that lens to next school year. So a couple of things I'm gonna hit on next are really with that lens to next school year. So thinking about our instructional model, and I want to say this from the get-go, our plan is to have in-person learning 5 days a week starting September 1st in the fall of next school year. That is our plan. Now, we recognize that we may have some families, though, that may not feel comfortable sending their students to school in person, or they've recognized maybe some of the flexibility that an online instructional offering has. So what we're looking to do, and you'll see attached there, is a letter and a survey that's going to go out to families this week. And we're just trying to get some details, some information, some rough numbers so that our administrative team can come together and plan what could some virtual options look like next school year. And to plan and really analyze what we would be able to do, we need to have a rough estimate of numbers. So that's a process that we're going to be going through, and we'll come back to the board and we'll come back to our families, and we'll be able to highlight what we would be able to offer next school year. You'll notice in the letter, though, we state pretty clearly, although we're able to offer some of that concurrent teaching model this school year, where the educator is teaching both students in person and online at the same time, right, in one classroom, probably not going to be something that we'll be able to offer next school year, just how taxing that is on our educators. We'll be looking at some alternative opportunities, again, based on numbers. And then academic support. So next year, as we're looking to next year, we're planning for next school year. You know, for some of our students, the pandemic created barriers to learning opportunities their peers may not have faced. And our admin team has been preparing to engage our educators in planning conversations for the fall and being responsive to those needs and addressing those needs that have arisen due to the pandemic. And so we're spending some time really looking at systems and structures within each of the schools, looking at the data that we're collecting, and being able to hit the ground running next school year with having interventions and things of that nature in place to address some of those barriers that crept up this school year, and so maybe some of those potential learning gaps that occurred for some of our students. So we've been planning during administrative team meetings about that, and we're going to be engaging educators during some of our Wednesdays moving forward in getting things structured, those plans in place, so again, start of next school year, we can hit the ground running with some of those things.
So going off of what you just said, and then in Amy's report and Mike's report, you guys are doing end of the year assessments too. Is there some way you can update us during the summer on what came out of this past year? So we have some idea, right? Because eventually you'll figure out where the kids are at. Can you let us know that? And then what you're gonna do in the fall?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be, and I know we have a few new board members here, so there's the state assessment system really, right, that happens pretty much the spring of every school year. Internally here as a district, we have a fall, winter, and spring assessment window that happens in each of our buildings. We're taking in some of that data so that we can be immediately responsive to that. And right now, what I've been doing is bringing some of that data together in aggregate, presenting it at the curriculum committee of the board meeting so that they can see some of that, but I'd be happy to present it to the full board.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
And then I have a question for Joe and Joe is, my personal opinion, the survey that should go out is to students, not parents, to students to say, you guys took online courses. Which courses are online, right? Should be online or could be online. Which ones should not be online, could not be online? Because I think that's far more informative than parents saying, my kid should be online or not online. Because it goes back to the equity thing we were talking about. There was a number of students who did very well online who were not doing well in person. So if we can capture those students from those courses and try to figure that out would be great. District Administrator.
I have a few things just to add. Just end of the year, as we've talked about, it'll be here before we know it. The end of the year calendar will be a little bit different. So the last week of school is Memorial Day week, so that Monday, students won't have school. Right now, they're scheduled for Tuesday and Thursday to have school. We will also have school on Wednesday that week, so we'll have one day, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 days of school for students. And then Friday will be the last day for staff. And on that last day for staff, we are planning on bringing our staff together to have a staff celebration to honor our retirees, to honor years of service, which we weren't able to do last year. So last year and then this year, the plan is to try to do that outside in the stadium, if weather permits, and have breakfast and just eat outside and do those things. So I'll keep the board informed as well, because you are more than welcome to come and join.
Do you know what the date is that?
So like
Friday, June 4th.
4th, okay.
Right?
Yes, so it'll be in the morning.
So no school Monday, school Tuesday for students, and school Thursday for students.
School Wednesday for students, 3 days for students.
Oh, and they come on the Wednesday.
Tuesday,
too.
Wednesday, and
come in.
That'll be better.
They'll come in on the
Yeah,
cleaning
so
Wednesday.
because we need to, typically, that's a planning day, right? But we also need to make up a day for snow.
No, that's fine, it's fine. I'm
So,
just trying to
and
think.
it's,
Trying
and it
to
makes
get there
sense,
on a
we don't need
Tuesday or
that,
a
the
Thursday.
planning day, we're here that Friday, we don't, the planning day's been trying to keep everybody in line all the way along
We won't need it.
and do things. We don't need it on that Wednesday, right? So we'll have students come that day.
Okay, I remember you wrote
Yep,
that.
yep, yep. So,
Okay, is that it? Or you have more?
I got a couple more. Vaccine clinic, just a big shout out to Hometown Pharmacy. They did a vaccine clinic for our 16 to 18-year-olds on May 6th. They'll be back on May 27th to vaccinate our kids. It's just, again, provide an opportunity for kids. We will also work with them. They've also showed interest in working with our kids who are 12 to 15.
Nice.
When that,
During summer school or something?
well, we'll see. Probably even that first shot before school is out, and then maybe having some evenings where people would come back. The nice thing right now with our high schoolers is, people don't have to take off jobs, if we can give that first shot, people don't have to take off, and then that second one, trying to, if it's an evening or things like that. So I will be working with Hometown Pharmacy and,
Did a lot of kids take the option?
well, we had about 40.
Yeah.
And again, one of the things I shared with initially, like, oh, just 40, but hey, first of all, it's 40.
Yeah.
And secondly, I have a son who's a senior in high school, he's already vaccinated. Right,
He was-
and so other families have already had
They
their
already
children
had it, yeah.
vaccinated before this opportunity even showed up, so, it was just a really easy way for do it, and thanks to Maureen Palmer, who did a lot of legwork behind it, and then, as an EMT, went and sat and observed kids, the 15 minutes afterwards, and worked from the high school, so, she did a phenomenal job working with, 2 people from Hometown Pharmacy as well, so we're very appreciative of that. National Honor Society had their induction ceremony last night. So we had 15 kids who were inducted in the Honor Society. Nick Prozik gave up his evening as he's to help present because he's a National Honor Society, so he's a senior member. And then obviously Miss Jelnick runs the show, and Mr. Jelnick is there, was helping facilitate as well. So thank them for giving up their Sunday evening and
Mother's Day.
for National Honor Society. And then finally, a couple of appreciation weeks. Last week was Teacher Appreciation Week again, so thank you to all of our teachers for everything they do and all of our educators. And this week is Nurse Appreciation Week. School Nurse Appreciation Day is Wednesday the 12th, and our school nurses have been unbelievable this year, and I don't know what we would do without them. So just a big shout out to Rodney Barrow and Jean Winter for all the work that they've done this year.
I think they're really phenomenal all the time.
They are.
And they've just, we've used them so much more than.
I would agree. They've had it's just the constant learning and the constant, and again, they're the ones on the front lines. They have a lot of difficult phone calls to make, and some people are very appreciative and grateful, and some people are not so appreciative and grateful. And again, it's very difficult. It's a difficult time for everybody. And again, we just always ask for people to have grace as we walk through all these different situations. So they've been awesome.
Thank you. Board President report. So I wrote some notes here. It was wonderful to hear the updates on the equity in our district. I'm personally very grateful for all the hard work that has been done in our district regarding equity. Tonight's presentation and the email summary that Vince sent out on May 5th once again shows how fortunate we are to live and work in a district that not only understands but reacts appropriately and decisively to our ever-changing world. And not only on equity, but on so many other topics too. I personally am very proud of the leadership our district is providing for our students, our staff, our parents, and community members on this very important issue. And Joe, I still can't believe you're not gonna be here. It's like, you've been here, as long as I've been on the board, I think you got hired right after I got on the board, and it's like, you are the middle school principal. It's gonna be so different. So thank you for your dedication and service these last 8 years. Thank you for doing such a great job running the middle school and stepping up to lead the technology interests of the district when you were asked. Thank you for all of the extra time and effort in helping us get through COVID-19 pandemic. And I know Vince has said many times he has leaned on you hard for things, and so thank you for being there for him. And we're certainly gonna miss your leadership when you're gone, so thank you. And then that's all I have. We have reports from our various different committees, so CISA 5.
We have not met out, we're meeting Thursday, it's the yearly meeting, annual meeting, so.
So you get to jump in right at the annual meeting?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's always the start, so when you're the new person,
Wow.
like what's happening, but, yeah.
Get you up to speed.
I'm not new anymore, I'm just going back, so.
Right.
I know what's going on now, so.
And then Bill, co-curricular.
The varsity football team finished the season undefeated at 6-0 and won the conference championship. The football team clinched the conference title in a thrilling Week 5 victory over Columbus with a final score of 17-14. They finished the season with a 40-6 win over Kewanee in a Saturday afternoon matchup at Lodi Stadium. The varsity soccer season came to an end on Thursday, May 6th, with a 4-1 loss to DeForest in a regional final game. The soccer team finished the year with a regular season record of 2 wins, 5 losses, and 1 tie. They opened the playoff competition with an 11-1 win over Madison Country Day School. The entire forensics team qualified for WHSFA state tournament this year. Out of a possible 25 points, 5 members scored a gold, that's 25 points. 3 members scored a silver, that's 23 to 34 points. And 4 members scored a bronze, 21 to 22 points. The varsity baseball team started the year with 1 win, 2 losses, with a win over Poinette in their season opener, followed by losses at Lakeside Lutheran and Sauk Prairie. The Blue Devils play 4 games this week, hosting Belleville tonight, Luther Prep on Tuesday, traveling to Poinette on Friday, and facing River Valley in a doubleheader at home on Saturday. The varsity softball crew has started the year 1-5, clinching their first win over the weekend with a 16-9 win at Belleville. This week they travel to Watertown Luther Prep on Tuesday, play at home versus Poinette on Friday, and attend a quad in Richland Center on Saturday. The girls' soccer team started the year 0-1-1 with a tie versus Lakeside Lutheran and a loss at home to DeForest. This week, the girls' soccer team hosts Luther Prep on Tuesday and travels to Monroe on Friday. The varsity track team has attended 1 meet so far this year, traveling to Deerfield on Thursday, April 29th. Things pick up this week with our track athletes traveling to Wisconsin Heights on Tuesday, Belleville on Friday, and Freedom on Saturday. The golf team is off to a great start, remaining undefeated in conference mini-meets. Additionally, they took the first place for D2 schools at the Reedsburg Invitational. This week, our varsity golfers traveled to Lake Mills for a conference mini-meet on Tuesday and travel to Kestrel Ridge for an invitational on Saturday. The end.
Thank you. It's the first time it hasn't been a rainy spring in a long time, so it's really good.
And dry, yeah.
Get everything in.
Well, we just changed things. We ordered a dry spring this year so that Sue Meffert, the athletic director, would have a different set of challenges. Because, I mean, do you ever remember that we played Monroe in anything?
Yeah, it's been a different.
In a lot of these other schools, I mean, I'm sure she hasn't been bored.
Let's see.
I only made it to like the last 10 minutes of the last meeting, and I don't have any notes.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then contract review,
We did not meet.
curriculum. Didn't meet.
Nope, didn't meet.
Facility finance did meet.
Yes, we met on, May 5th. We talked about a few things, and a couple of these haven't been mentioned this evening, so. We talked about the point of beginning update, for our long-term facility planning, and looking at, sports complex or
Green
kind of
space.
future of sporting. So they're gonna come and do kind of a walkthrough, and we're gonna have, one member of the committee try to make that, timeframe when they come to review everything.
And who's they, Julie? I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
Who's the they that will come and review?
Point of Beginning is a consulting
Okay.
firm that we've hired to help us with facility planning. So they're like an engineering firm. Okay.
They help us
So
with
they're
our
gonna come
stadium.
and do a
Right,
review of that. And then we decided that just, it didn't need everybody, but one person from facilities finance will try to make that meeting or that preview. We talked a lot about the track and the drain tile and some of the repairs that have been done in the past on the track. That was kind of a concern. We did talk about the co-curricular and support staff compensation, and then also there is a van purchase for our special education department for the transition program, which is awesome, and that was part of one of the grants that Tiffany had worked on. We also looked at ESSER funding, which is the government funding we're getting for COVID relief. And then also about having a breakfast the last day of school.
I'm sure we get grants, other people give us grants and stuff, but it always seems like, Tiffany, is that all you do, is get grants for us?
Tiffany is really
such a job?
good.
There won't be as many next year because we got the Dane County money, so that kind of replaced a couple other things that we wanted to do next year, so
Okay.
fewer grants next year.
Okay.
Yeah, it pays to sit in the Dane County Superintendent's meeting.
Yeah. For sure.
That's the only reason we know about that.
Thank you. And I don't think policy met. Right?
Nope.
Okay. Future meetings are right there in front of you, and we do not need to go back into closed session.
So motion to adjourn.
Motion by Bill, second by Barb. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned.